welcome to The Nation. I'm Jessie Chahal. On the 6th episode of The Nation's All Sides today, I speak to Party Warisan parliamentary candidate for P115 Batu, Nathan Batu, and also joining me in the hot seat is Chan Quinn, MCA spokesperson. Welcome, Quinn. Welcome, Nathan. Thank you for being here. You're a little bit under the weather. That's because you've been out and about. This is your first time contesting as well, Nathan.
Sure. We have 10 candidates in Batu. You have to have your voice heard. You've got to visit that many places.
That's right.
It's grueling. It is a tough thing. I've lost my voice within the first, second or third day.
There's a lot of attention there. A lot of people are talking about the Batu seat. And Queen as well, this round you are not contesting, but you are still on the ground campaigning and doing your job.
Yes, I'm on a campaign trail as well. I'm campaigning for all my Toko party from the Barisan Nasional side, and I've been to 6 states so far.
Right, so on the road and travelling, and of course this interview as well is part of the lead up to GE15. We are just days away from that big day on the 19th of November. But let's now talk about parties, manifestos and promises as well. Let's assume for discussion's sake that if there was yet again another change of hands, how do we ensure that promises, that programs are not cut short, that we must maintain that this must continue, and how do we ensure that policies are not changed without consulting stakeholders? Quina?
I think I must start first by saying this. Governing a nation like ours today, we are working with multiple volatilities, right? A lot of challenges, a lot of uncertainties, and I think manifesto became really popular when Pakatan Harapan government first failed to deliver its promises, right? Back in 2018 when they became government, and now, I mean, that's advantage to us, because the ball now has passed on from PH to Perikatan Nasional, and then with Barisan Nasional, and even with this unexpected, passing of the ball, the baton, we have actually made a lot out of it, right? We have been seeing staggering growth, 14.2% the latest, which is really impressive, and I think it comes down to accountability. Whoever is the administrator, right? I think we have to stick to what we promise and promise only what we can deliver.
Oh, I like that. Whoever the administrator is, promises must be kept to be fair and just to the people. Now then, how are you looking at this?
Right. Two things. There's micro issues and macro issues. Party manifesto at national level and Batu constituency manifestos. So we've actually unveiled right now the Batu action plan. It's a very simple plan. It's just 4 items. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Who's going to pay for it? It's just very simple, basic. These are the voices of Batu. Now, regardless of what happens on top, generally there has been a tendency of YB peruntukan. They're waiting for peruntukan from the government. If the peruntukan stops or there's some clash in politics, things come to a grinding halt. That has to stop. The quality of Chalon, I think, is just as important. You've had BN and PH in the past. Those who don't like BN policies, those who don't, PH policies, there's always this thing is falling through the cracks. So as far as Warisan is concerned, I, as the Chalon for Batu, am committed to work with or without the peruntukan. I'm a businessman. I know where to find money. I know how to do the things that my constituents need on the ground.
Okay. Yeah, I really like that, because I think when we compare the manifesto, I mean, this time Barisan Nasional, we call ours the Padu, right? So it's amal dan usaha, right? We are going to deliver what we promise, right? And I really like what Nathan just mentioned just now. It's very important that we tell the people not just how we plan to spend the money, but where the money comes from, right? We see, beautiful promises, by Pakatan Harapan all this while, but this is, we are talking about the economy post-COVID, right? And this has to be the first thing that we tackle, right? And if you don't bring in the money and you don't put food on the table, institutional reform becomes a very far-fetched, idea. So it's very important that we get the basics right. Just tackle the economy. Let us put Malaysia back on track, and then we tackle the institutional reform. And then there is space, right? Breathing space for people to push the institutional reforms.
Right, and at this juncture, Nathan.
If I can just add quickly, very quickly, I think 70% of my constituencies is B40, almost B60. So all of the mega projects, all of the pie in the sky, rainbow type stuff doesn't, there's a disconnected. Nasi periuk dengan what is being promised, it doesn't translate to the household. Now, I've walked more than 2,000 over houses in the PPRs. I have actually seen, heard the poverty, the grinding poverty.
Okay.
So when you talk about things and it doesn't translate to the day-to-day, massive disconnect.
But at this point as well, transparency and accountability also must be something that is at the forefront of any party's agenda or promise. Both of you seem to be in agreement, but realistically or in reality perhaps, there seems to be a fractious landscape here in the country. What is this signifying? Are we on the cusp of change, or is this a steady decline, Nathan?
If I could just very quickly sum it up, I think both. There are interesting dynamics at play. In the past, it was always party, party, party. Now there is a selection of chalon or party, where in areas where the constituency, the chalon is good, people are tending to look at what the chalon brings to the table versus voting en bloc for the party. Because you vote for the party, what gets done at the constituency, there's a massive disconnect.
Is that the same way, Quina, that you are viewing how people may vote?
A little bit different, with now you can see that there isn't one coalition that has managed to garner, a very outright support, right, or outright majority. And so I think the people right now are in a state of confusion, right? And I would say we are seeing disappointment as well overall.
Okay, you say people are in a state of confusion. Is this what you're hearing on the grassroots in terms of where you've been campaigning? What has been the feedback?
Yes, very much. It has been that way, and people are confused. They do not know who to vote for this time because they have seen, government, going back on their promises. They have seen imperfect governments. They have seen bad governance. They have seen, all sorts of scandals surrounding administrators, and so people are losing faith, in the institution. But I must emphasize that we must applaud our civil service for being steadfast. They have been so resilient. In the past 3 years, we have seen such political instability and volatility, but yet they remain steadfast, in delivering the public services to the people.
If I could just add, just walking into people's homes randomly and introducing myself, the first thing that is apparent is disgust for politicians. Generally, you go there and everybody is like politicos, datang untuk pancing unding, and literally I have to preface the conversation by saying, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. There's so much negativity and anger against politicians because, they are in a la-la land versus the day-to-day,
Which is a point I'm going to come to very quickly as well, perhaps in our next segment. But let's just talk a little bit about stability, as you mentioned. The bank's OPR rate, that has just been adjusted yet again. And staring at us in our faces now is an economic road ahead, an upturn or a very possibly a downturn. What would you say now? Then are some of the low-hanging fruits which can aid in a turnaround for the better?
Right. I'm a ex-Pricewaterhouse chartered accountant. So as a business owner, all the indices, be it from Singapore, London, UK, US, wherever, is all saying of a possible recession down the road. Now, if we are oblivious to what is coming, I think you've got to be prepared for the fact that the budgets will be cut. There is not going to be enough money left. Then what happens? If you don't have a steady hand, both at national and at each constituency, I think we're looking at a lot of trouble in the year ahead.
Quina, what would you say are some of those low-hanging fruits?
Well, I think this is a very good question, right? And I'm glad that this comes within the remit of Bank Negara, a very credible, right, institution. But I think people need to take the long view as well. I think the OPR, it has not gone back to the levels of pre-pandemic levels. Let's look at it that way, right? And I think that there is hope, for Malaysia. I do not want to take that very dim view because I think when you have a stable government that comes up, after post-GE, I hope so. I hope we have an administrator that has the vision on where to steer Malaysia towards to, then it can restore confidence, right? We can bring back those foreign funds, right? We can bring back those investments. And that's how we are going to accumulate wealth enough for us to roll out programs that has multiplier effects. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I could just add, I think it's not just going to be a Malaysian issue, it's going to be an ASEAN issue, it's going to be a global issue. So if the rest of the world is in a decline, there's nothing that you could do here to steady it. it's going to be more brims and crims and stuff that you're going to hand out, and it's just not going to be enough.
Okay, of elections and what is glaring in our face right now is the anti-hopping law, and I'm sure that perhaps both of you can also see that it's not completely airtight, and perhaps there are some cracks, as you've mentioned before. What are, in your opinion, some scenarios pertaining to anti-hopping law that would be, obviously impactful on?
Yeah, I mean, being a practicing lawyer and being an ex federal counsel with the AG's chambers, I think this is something. I mean, I look forward to the passing of the anti-party hopping laws, and I think it is definitely the first step in the right direction. All right, it will now help us. It paves way for the country to actually deter this culture of hopping parties. But I think it's only a start. I think the whole process will not be complete and totally airtight if we do not introduce a process that we call the recall process. That is returning mandate to the people. Like the people can decide if an act of hopping party is acceptable or not. Ultimately, the people needs to have that decision-making power, right? It could probably stop, right now with the anti-party hopping law in place, it could probably stop a PRM Malacca 2021, but it will not stop the Sheraton move, right? And so it really highlights what the country needs. We need to move towards value and principle-based politics.
If I could, I agree with Quina. It's a step in the right direction. Implementation, execution is another whole ball game altogether. I think you can have the best intentions, but how the politicians will maneuver and how these things will play out, left to be seen. It's the first time. I think, it's a step in the right direction, I agree.
Yeah.
But I think, there's lots more to be seen how it's going to roll out.
There's still a bit of a road ahead.
Sure, for sure.
Where that is concerned.
Long road ahead.
And we will learn from it.
We're going to take a quick breather for now, but do keep it locked on right here on Bernama TV. In the hot seats with me, of course, Nathan, Batu and Chan Quinn of MCA. We'll be right back.
Bagaimana mengundi? Buat semakan tempat mengundi dan pergi ke saluran yang ditetapkan. Masuk ke tempat mengundi apabila dibenarkan oleh polis yang mengawal. Serahkan MyCard dan slip saluran kepada kerani pengundian pertama. Tunjukkan kedua-dua belah tangan untuk diperiksa. Bergerak ke hadapan kerani pengundian kedua. Celupkan jari telunjuk kiri ke dalam botol dakwat pilihan raya. Dapatkan kertas undi daripada kerani pengundian ketiga. Tandakan pangkah pada ruang kosong bersebelahan nama dan simbol calon pada kertas undi. Masukkan kertas undi yang telah ditanda ke dalam peti undi. Keluar segera dari tempat mengundi setelah selesai. Laksanakan tanggungjawab anda.
You're watching The Nation with me, Jessie Chahel. This is The Nation All Sides. We are in our 6th episode as we build up to the general elections. Of course, that's happening on Saturday, November 19th. On the show today, I have with me in the hot seat from Parti Warisan, P115 Batu, Nathan Batu, and also Chan Quinn, MCA spokesperson. Thank you very much for being here. And of course, it has been an interesting conversation. Now I want to talk about what you said very much earlier in the program, where people have a lack of trust and they feel that perhaps they're also a little bit, at this point, feeling a little bit fed up, if I could use that word. People aside, all the affiliations that we see can change in a blink of an eye, really. There's no element of fair play, or so it seems. Now, how can we change this within the sphere, and of course further down as well, the road to convince people, especially for things that are race-based, that is that one party is not out to get the other, because that seems to be at the forefront for how a voter will make a decision.
Trust deficit, it's a kind word. I think it's worse than that. At the heart of it, whether you are Chinese, Indian, Malay, Christian, Muslim, whatever, it's economics, it's money. I think if the nation was prosperous, people won't be grabbing. You have a cake enough, big enough for people to eat. I think that is the crux of the issue. The crux of the issue is the fact that people are struggling with the cost of living. People are struggling to solve their basic household day-to-day issues. Once that is there, then we talk about, you can't talk about Pejuang Negara, on an empty stomach. It's almost impossible. The Grab drivers can't get out there with an expired road tax. People can't do things.
Bread and butter issues.
Bread and butter issues. So that is the thing. Then is exacerbated by people's emotions of voting for a party and looking for a change, and then something happens, there's horse trading, and then people get even more upset. It's dua kali, it's already kana here, kana there, kana here. So it's frustration just boiling. This is the pulse that I feel as I walk and speak.
Right. Quina, from BN, of course, MIC, MCA, how do you view this?
I think when you talk about race, right, can I just take this opportunity to address this? Yes, our party is race-based in terms of membership, but if you notice, right, the M comes before the C in MCA. Malaysia comes first, right? We're called the Malaysian Chinese Association, not the other way around, And so I think the only race in politics that we need to look at is the race that the entire Malaysia society runs on. The race course that we're looking at, I think we need to rethink the way we ask this question. If we continue to look at politics, the GE, across, racial segregation along racial lines, I think we are falling backwards, right? And I think that for any political party to thrive, the only race that we should focus on is the race, to a better nation, to a better future, right? And I think that under Ismail Sabri's leadership, I think with the political moratorium that was in place, right, it has actually strengthened the institution, and it allowed Malaysia to stay afloat, in face of the very challenging COVID-19 season.
Right. Yeah. I want to go back to trust again. And what happened in 2018 is that the people who came into power suddenly said, hey, we didn't know we were going to win. Now we are not sure what we need to do. 22 months, yes, it was a short-lived term as well at that point. But looking back, was that acceptable? And how do we prevent such an occurrence from reoccurring?
Respectfully, without upsetting my colleague here, BN didn't keep quiet. They kept poking all the time. There was issues. I mean, it wasn't like a 5-year, you serve it out, then I'll come back inside. I mean, BN did provoke issues all the time. I think they were not used to being in opposition. That is a given. 60 years of ruling, all of a sudden, kemahiran hidup is politics only, and then all of a sudden they are out by the sidelines, not having a hand on things, and all they did at that point in time. I'm not saying PH was perfect. I'm not, but they had 2.5 versus 60. That was Warisan was then part of PH as well, and then all of that sort of people decided there was too much confusion. Everything just fell apart. So I think political maturity, enough is enough. Going forward in this election, after this election, I humbly request, I hope that all political parties put aside all of this politicking and just focus on the people.
Is BN able to do that or agree with that mindset?
I agree to a certain extent, because those instability, it's caused by many parties, right? Not just, those that you named, right? We look at, people remember, right, the Sheraton move. People remember Anwar failing to deliver his, strong, formidable, convincing numbers. People remember how Muhyiddin failed to contain, right, the situation, the impact of COVID-19, right? People also remember 1MDB, right? But out of all that, that's why the theme of the BN campaign is important. It goes back to kestabilan and kemakmuran. You need to bring it back to the basics. You need to achieve this unity and stability before you can champion for prosperity for all Malaysians. And I think we shouldn't lose sight of that. You are right, it's down to the economics, how to make the cake bigger so that you can then go into equitable distribution of that resources and wealth to all people.
This time around, you've got a brand new audience, first-time voters under Undi 18. In your opinion, Nathan, how will Malaysia vote? Do you think it will be race-based, party-based, or based on issues and individuals? You did give us a bit of a teaser earlier.
I think it's going to be probably the most confused, nobody has a reading on the ground. If any political pundit says that I've read it, I see the things falling, it's just, it's not right. Places where chalons are shining, places where parties are shining, places where people dislike personalities, there's just too much confusion on the ground. I think what BN, in some sense, thought would happen did not quite happen. Even within BN itself, you hear all sorts of dissenting voices, right from Perlis to Johor to Kelantan to Terengganu to Penang. You hear that. Even in Sabah, it's the same case. Except with the exception of Sarawak, which is just internal. Everywhere else, there are dissenting voices, and there's not a unified voice. Just go to the Ceramas. Just see the energy on the ground.
But Nathan, how will Malaysia vote?
I think it comes back, like I said, there is no magic formula right now.
All right.
It's going to be constituency to constituency.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. The person who can tell you exactly how people will vote is going to be a really powerful politician. But even with that kind of power, I do not think they can, determine the outcome, in this, politically volatile times.
But how does the party view this in terms of trends and data that you have, and again, what you're hearing when you go down to the street?
There are so many factors because this electorate has so much to offer, race, age and gender. We're seeing first-time voters coming out, and everybody has a different concept of the Malaysia they want to live in, and so when people go to the ballot boxes, right, they need to vote for what they believe in, right? And is it a vote for, anti-corruption? Like the young people would say, I want better governance. Is it a vote for stability? Is it a vote for a government that can future-proof us, ahead of difficult times? Yes. So I think I don't have an answer for that. I don't think, we have a short-term answer for that. Right. But what I know is we have to go back to the basics before we even think about, taking flight and, making these major improvements, because if you don't get the house in order, then, what can you do? And I need to disagree on what he said about instability within the coalition. You see, Barisan Nasional is the only coalition that has stood the test of time. We have gone through thick and thin. We even have a former prime minister in jail, but the coalition is still intact. We're not relying on one tokoh, one personality, for the entire party to hang on, right? The team is there.
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to sort of rebut on that based on Barisan.
Yes and no. Obviously, she is the spokesperson. I agree to disagree. We leave it at that. She does her BN stuff. And as far as I'm concerned, the way I look at things right now is it is going to be messy because each age segment looks at different things. Their requirements are different. 18 to 24, 24 to 40, 40 upwards, the senior citizens. Everybody has conflicting demands. Some people are talking about food on the table. Some people are talking about corruption. Some people, what emotionally ticks their own boxes, that will decide how they vote.
We don't have much time left on the clock, as it is always when we have a really insightful and interesting discussion. Nathan, hand on heart, as someone who, of course, is running this year, what do you and your party want Malaysia to know as the truth?
BN, PH. Those were the options. Now there's Warisan. Warisan has given us a platform for people who were probably not so attracted to politics to get into politics and serve. Just PH doesn't, or BN do not have the monopoly on doing good for the nation. It takes a village to raise a child. Likewise, many people can contribute to nation building. It is not just the sole rights of BN. They haven't signed any lease with anyone. Warisan is here to stay, and I'm sure will deliver.
Quina is biting her lip. She has something to say.
I'm not gonna put up a juicy fight over here.
Sure.
But I only have these true things to say, right? Integrity, honesty, diligence. All these are very old values, but these are the values that resonate with people. And I think Barisan Nasional, the party that I'm in, we believe in that, and we have the experience, And the Barisan Nasional that you vote for today is not the Barisan Nasional pre-GE14, right? We have learned from our failures. We have learned from our weaknesses, and the people have spoken, and we have heard them. And so I'm looking forward to see the emergence of a new batch of leaders. We are not just relying on one or two personalities. There are also senior politicians like Tengku Zafro, Azalina Othman, Kari Jamaluddin, and these are the people who represent our Barisan. We are called the National Front. We have never MIC, MCA. We've never gone into battle alone. You can't achieve anything, in isolation. That's what we're talking about. And I think this team is a formidable team to bring forth the changes that we want to see post-GE15.
Right. Which is equally important as well post-election.
The proof is in the pudding. Let's come back a year from now and see whether all those statements do actually measure up and happens.
I will be right here looking forward to that. Thank you very much for coming in.
Nathan, Batu, sentiasa denganmu.
All right, thank you very much. Of course, that was our speakers today on The Nation. GE15, all sides. Make sure that you go out to cast your vote in just under a week. That date is 19th November 2022. I'm Jessie Chahal. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.
Kita ini satu keluarga. Kita ini orang berbangsa. Malaysia berdaulat, penuh muafakat.
Kerajaan amat sedar betapa pentingnya sektor penanaman getah bagi peningkatan ekonomi negara. Sebab itulah pihak kerajaan memperkenalkan pelbagai-bagai insentif untuk